The sergeant towered over her, his shadow eclipsing the morning sun. The other recruits watched, smirking as he grabbed her collar and slammed her into the mud. They had all seen this before, the ritual humiliation of whoever he deemed weakest. For 3 weeks, she had endured his targeted abuse without complaint. But something changed in her eyes as she lay there covered in mud and rain. Something dangerous awakened. What happened next would alter the course of their military careers forever. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing to Quiet Tales Studio for more tales of unexpected strength and hidden courage. Dawn breaks over Fort Blackridge military training facility. Rain pelts the faces of 24 recruits standing at rigid attention, their bodies already fatigued from the 4 a.m. wake-up call. This is no ordinary boot camp. Fort Blackridge boasts a 70% dropout rate and produces the military's most elite soldiers. Among the rigid formations, Scarlett Harper stands slightly apart. Not physically, but in essence. At 5 feet 6 inches with a slender build, she lacks the imposing presence of her fellow recruits. While others flinch as Drill Sergeant Rex Stone barks orders inches from their faces, Scarlett's expression remains impassive, almost detached. Stone, a bull of a man with 20 years of combat experience etched into the lines of his weathered face, patrols the line with predatory focus. He stops at Scarlett, eyes narrowing. For a fraction of a second, Scarlett's mind flashes elsewhere. A crystal chandelier, diplomatic uniforms, her in an elegant black dress, observing 2 officials exchange something beneath a table. Her face betrays nothing as the memory fades. Behind her, several recruits exchange smirks. Blake Morrison, broad-shouldered with an easy confidence that speaks of privilege, leans toward his bunkmate and whispers a bet that Harper won't last the week. The morning unfolds into a brutal obstacle course. Recruits haul themselves over walls, swing across mud pits, and crawl under barbed wire. Scarlett visibly struggles with the upper body challenges, her arms trembling as she attempts to climb the rope, eventually sliding down with rope burns on her palms. Stone's criticism is relentless and personal. The other recruits stifle laughter, not wanting to draw his attention to themselves. Scarlett accepts every harsh word without visible reaction, picking herself up and moving to the next station with mechanical efficiency. That evening in the mess hall, Scarlett sits alone, methodically consuming the bland military rations. The table around her remains empty until 2 female recruits, Amber Wells and Victoria Chase, reluctantly take seats when all other tables fill. Their conversation reveals suspicions about Scarlett's background. The way she talks, the vocabulary she uses, the advanced books she reads during breaks. When Victoria mentions doctoral-level education, Scarlett's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. Her deflection is smooth but unconvincing. Later that night, while tending to her blistered hands with practiced medical precision, a letter falls from her bag addressed to Drive S. Harper, Department of Linguistics. Amber glimpses it but says nothing, her suspicions confirmed. Days blend together in a grueling rhythm of physical exertion, mental challenges, and constant pressure. While other recruits form bonds through shared suffering, Scarlett remains on the periphery, observing more than participating. Stone's attention to her never wavers, his criticism growing more pointed as she continues to perform adequately, but never exceptionally. During firearms training, Stone's humiliation tactics intensify. Something in Scarlett's eyes suggests she could correct her stance perfectly if she wanted to, but she maintains just enough imperfection to avoid standing out further. Blake, watching from nearby, begins to reassess his earlier judgment. There's something about her that doesn't quite add up. 3 weeks into training, Stone leads the platoon on a 15-mile march through driving rain. While he carries only a light pack, the recruits struggle under 60 pounds of gear. When Blake's ankle turns on a hidden route and he begins to fall, Scarlett subtly shifts position to support his weight until he regains balance. Stone notices immediately and punishes her with push-ups in the mud while the platoon continues marching. When she catches up, Blake quietly thanks her, but her response reveals military philosophy that seems deeper than a typical recruit would possess. That afternoon brings hand-to-hand combat training. Stone calls Scarlett to the center, his dangerous smile indicating this will be the final humiliation. The entire platoon forms a circle around them as rain continues to fall, turning the training ground into a muddy arena. For 3 weeks, Stone announces loudly, she has moved like a civilian. Maybe she should have stayed in whatever soft life she came from. For just a moment, Scarlett's mind flashes to a darkened room, her hands moving with blinding speed to disarm an attacker twice her size. A voice crackles through an earpiece in her memory. Mission complete, Agent Harper. The memory vanishes as Stone lunges forward without warning, grabbing Scarlett's collar and shoulder, using his superior weight to slam her hard into the mud. The impact knocks the wind from her lungs, and muddy water splashes up around her body. Laughter ripples through the platoon. Nervous, uncomfortable, but present, Stone stands over her, feet planted on either side of her mud-covered form, announcing that this is what weakness looks like, what happens when someone doesn't belong. Something changes in Scarlett's eyes. The docile recruit vanishes, replaced by something cold, calculating, and infinitely dangerous. Her hand shoots out with snake-like precision, gripping Stone's ankle at exactly the pressure point that sends shock waves of pain up his leg. In one fluid motion that seems to defy physics, she sweeps his supporting leg, while simultaneously rolling her body to create leverage. Stone, all 220 pounds of him, crashes down with such force that mud sprays in a 6-foot radius. Before he can process what's happening, Scarlett has reversed their positions completely, applying a joint lock that immobilizes him with minimal effort. Her technique is flawless, the kind that comes from thousands of hours of practice. Absolute silence falls over the training ground. Even the rain seems to pause. Scarlett calmly states that the first rule of combat assessment is never underestimating an opponent based on appearance. She releases Stone and stands at perfect attention, covered in mud but composed as if awaiting further instructions. Stone rises slowly, his face flushed with a dangerous mixture of humiliation and rage. His mouth opens to deliver what would undoubtedly be a career-ending tirade when a commanding voice cuts through the silence. Colonel Marcus Kane, silver-haired with the quiet confidence of someone who never needs to raise his voice to command a room, steps forward from the crowd. No one had noticed him observing the entire scene. He interrupts Stone's attempt at explanation, stating that Lieutenant Colonel Harper has made her point quite effectively. Gasps ripple through the assembled recruits. Confusion replaces shock on their faces as they process the revelation. Kane addresses the platoon, explaining that what they've just witnessed is perhaps the most valuable lesson they'll receive during their time at Fort Blackridge. Lieutenant Colonel Scarlett Harper is one of their most decorated intelligence operatives. For the past 3 weeks, she has undergone their training from the beginning, enduring everything they have, and considerable additional targeting, to assess their current training protocols. Stone stands frozen as the realization of what he's done slowly dawns on him. Kane continues, noting that Harper's report was correct. They have serious vulnerabilities in how they evaluate recruit potential. Sometimes the most valuable soldiers aren't the ones who yell the loudest, but those who observe, adapt, and wait for the precise moment to act. The face of warfare is changing, Kane explains to the stunned recruits. Brute strength alone won't win the battles ahead. That evening, Scarlett packs her belongings in the barracks, her mission complete. Amber and Victoria approach awkwardly, struggling with how to address someone they now know outranks everyone at the facility. Their conversation reveals the true purpose of Scarlett's infiltration: to expose how military selection had become too focused on aggression and physical dominance, missing crucial skills like resilience, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence. The enemies they face now don't always wear uniforms or march in formation, Scarlett explains. They hide in plain sight, like she did. The soldiers who will stop them might not look like traditional warriors. Stone appears in the doorway, his usual imposing presence diminished. After a long moment of silence, he straightens his spine and offers a crisp, perfect salute, formally requesting permission to review her findings to become a better instructor. Scarlett studies him, seeing past the bravado to the soldier underneath. A man who, for all his flaws, believes in serving something greater than himself. She approves his request, and they agree to begin the next day. The next morning, Scarlett enters the officers' quarters where Colonel Kane waits with several other high-ranking officials. The atmosphere is tense, filled with the unspoken recognition that Fort Blackridge's training methods need significant reform. Kane acknowledges that her demonstration was more dramatic than anticipated, but effective. When Scarlett mentions Stone's request to review her findings, Kane raises an eyebrow at this unexpected development. She assures him that beneath Stone's bluster, he cares about producing effective soldiers. He's just been operating under an outdated paradigm. The briefing continues for hours as Scarlett presents her observations, complete with data from previous operations where diverse skill sets proved critical to mission success. Her most troubling finding is how predictable their selection process has become. Any adversary studying their methods would know exactly what kind of soldier they're producing and how to counter them. When asked for recommendations, Scarlett responds without hesitation. Complete overhaul of evaluation metrics, integration of cognitive assessment alongside physical testing, and most importantly, instructors who recognize that the strongest soldier isn't always the loudest or most physically imposing. Kane realizes that changing Stone's perspective will change the entire culture, given his immense influence over the training cadre. That afternoon, Scarlett meets Stone in a small conference room away from curious eyes. The sergeant sits rigidly, his discomfort evident, but his determination clear. He attempts to apologize, but Scarlett redirects the conversation toward evolution. The battlefield has changed, and their training needs to change with it. For the next 2 hours, they review video footage from Scarlett's 3 weeks in training, pausing at key moments where potential was overlooked or misjudged. Stone watches with growing unease as he sees himself repeatedly dismiss recruits who didn't fit his preconceived notion of a soldier. When shown footage of Luna Brooks, a slight recruit struggling with heavy equipment, Stone initially sees only failure. But upon closer examination, he notices what he'd missed. She had improvised a leverage system using her belt and a nearby post to reduce the effective weight. She was problem-solving, and in the field, that kind of adaptive thinking saves lives. Under their current system, she would wash out before week 4. They continue through dozens of examples, Stone's perspective gradually shifting as patterns emerge. By evening, his defensiveness has given way to genuine concern. He finally admits they're missing the quiet ones, the thinkers, the ones who might actually win the next war. Over the next week, Scarlett leads a comprehensive review of Fort Blackridge's training methodology. Working alongside Stone, she introduces new assessment tools that measure cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking alongside physical capabilities. Initially, other instructors resist, clinging to traditional metrics they understand. But when Stone, their respected leader, throws his full support behind the changes, admitting he was wrong and that they've been training soldiers for yesterday's wars, the tide begins to turn. By the second week, the transformation is underway. Recruits previously on the verge of washing out find themselves excelling in new challenge scenarios designed to test creative thinking and teamwork. Blake, whose physical prowess had always been his primary asset, struggles initially with the more nuanced evaluations, but learns to think beyond just himself and his capabilities. As the training evolves, so do the relationships within the platoon. Hierarchies based solely on physical dominance give way to more complex networks of respect based on complementary skills. Even Stone transforms, his instruction becoming more nuanced as he learns to spot potential in its various forms. 1 month after Scarlett's revelation, Colonel Kane visits the training grounds to assess progress. What he finds impresses him: a cohesive unit where diverse talents are recognized and leveraged effectively. He informs Scarlett that her work there is nearly done, but presents her with new orders, expanding the initiative beyond Fort Blackridge to all training facilities, with her leading the effort. The sealed folder contains a significant promotion, but Kane warns her that resistance to these changes goes beyond stubborn instructors. There are those in high command who believe they're weakening the force, making it vulnerable. Taking this position would put her directly in their crosshairs. Scarlett's response is characteristic. She's been in crosshairs before, and usually those targeting her regret it. She accepts the position without hesitation. 6 months later, a new group of diverse recruits arrives at Fort Blackridge. Among them are faces that would never have made it past the first week under the old system. Stone and Scarlett, now in her officer's uniform with appropriate insignia, watch from the observation platform. Stone points out a recruit in the back row who barely meets the height requirement, admitting that the old version of himself would have broken her on the first day. Now, he wonders what she might be capable of that he can't see yet. The transformation in Fort Blackridge's training program has been remarkable. Completion rates are up 23%, and quality metrics on graduate performance are unprecedented. The program has expanded to 5 additional facilities, with other countries requesting to implement similar systems. Scarlett, now a full colonel overseeing strategic implementation from the Pentagon, makes a rare visit back to Fort Blackridge. She watches a new class tackle the final qualification exercise, noting the striking diversity, not just in physical appearance, but in approach and thinking style. Stone, now the head instructor for the entire facility, informs her they've received applications from 3 other countries wanting to implement similar programs. The future of warfare is changing, and those who adapt first gain the advantage. As they observe a slight female recruit take command of a difficult situation, her quiet authority immediately respected by her peers, Stone mentions that Scarlett is being considered for general. She deflects, saying there's still work to be done. Stone reminds her to remember where it all started when that promotion comes. In the mud, with a sergeant who thought he knew everything about strength, and a lieutenant colonel who proved him wrong. The exercise concludes successfully, and Blake, now an instructor himself, gathers the recruits for debriefing. His teaching style blends the best of old discipline with the new emphasis on adaptive thinking. He echoes words that have been spoken for generations, but with new meaning. Look to your left, look to your right. The person you least expect might be the one who saves your life someday. On the Wall of Honor, Scarlett's photo appears among other distinguished officers, those who changed the system from within. Blake addresses the recruits, but his words seem directed at a broader audience. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Those are the people who change everything when they finally reveal their true strength. As the new recruits disperse to begin their final preparations, we see a fresh-faced recruit who reminds us of Scarlett in the beginning. Quiet, observant, underestimated. The cycle begins again, but this time with eyes that know to look beyond the obvious. The strongest warriors are often the quietest ones. They watch, they learn, they wait. And when their moment comes, they change everything. Remember to subscribe to Quiet Tales Studio for more stories of unexpected strength and hidden courage. And let us know in the comments, what hidden strengths do you possess that others might underestimate?